The Art of Desire. Silva often found herself drifting into solitude, a space where the world softened, and her thoughts found clarity. Her footsteps echoed softly as she wandered the quiet streets of the city, her heart beating in tune with the rhythm of her own quiet contentment. Life, in its noise and chaos, faded into a distant hum when she was alone, and that's how she liked it. Today, however, she felt a pull, a longing she couldn't name, leading her to the small, ivy-covered museum nestled in the corner of town. It wasn't a grand gallery, not the kind that held the treasures of the world, but it was peaceful, familiar, and it called to her on days like these. Silva's hand gripped her sketchbook tightly as she stepped inside. The usual comforting silence of the museum enveloped her as her heels clicked against the smooth marble floor. She passed the other exhibits without a second glance, heading straight to the back where her destination awaited. In the intimate room adorned with mustard yellow wallpaper, her breath caught in her throat. There it was, the painting. She had discovered it months ago, hanging alone, illuminated softly by the golden light filtering through the windows. A woman in red, painted with exquisite detail, sat posed gently, her intense gaze meeting Silva's the moment she entered the room. The woman seemed timeless, a being that transcended the ages, her allure impossible to resist. Silva sat down on the familiar bench, flipping open her sketchbook and raising her pencil, ready to capture the essence of this ethereal figure. But as the tip of the pencil hovered above the page, she hesitated. There was something in the woman's gaze today, something deeper, something alive. Silva lingered at the museum's entrance, her fingers tracing the smooth, familiar surface of her closed sketchbook. She didn't know where to go next, what to do without the woman who had anchored her days. The sun was setting, casting a soft, golden glow over the street, but it felt cold to her now. She had grown used to that warm light, coming not from the sun but from the woman's gaze, the quiet intensity of their unspoken connection. For the next few days, Silva wandered through the city aimlessly. She tried to lose herself in its hum, to distract herself with the buzz of people and places, but nothing felt right. The art supplies in her apartment remained untouched. Her hands itched to create, but her heart wasn't in it anymore. Each time she picked up her pencil, it felt heavier than before, weighed down by the absence of the woman in red. How could she draw when the very inspiration that fueled her creativity had been stolen away? On a particularly gray afternoon, Silva found herself standing at the museum steps once more. She didn't even remember walking there, but her feet had carried her back, as if on instinct. She hadn't been able to stay away. The doors stood closed before her, and she hesitated. What was she hoping for? That the painting would somehow be back, that the woman would return, waiting for her with that same fierce gaze, ready to share more of her soul? Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the doors. The familiar quiet of the museum greeted her, along with the faint echo of her footsteps on the marble floors. She walked the same path she had walked so many times before, past the busts, the landscapes, the forgotten faces of other artworks. The back room was just as she had left it. Empty, cold, with only the mustard-colored wallpaper to greet her. But as she stood there, staring at the vacant spot where the painting had hung, something caught her eye. A small plaque had been left behind, one she hadn't noticed before. Private collection. Temporarily removed. Her heart skipped a beat. Temporarily. It wasn't gone forever. Silva's fingers hovered over the small brass plaque, her mind racing. She wasn't sure when, but the painting would come back. The woman would return to her. A part of her ached at the thought of the waiting, but another part of her felt an odd relief. It wasn't over yet. Their story wasn't finished. In the days that followed, Silva tried to resume her normal life. She took up her sketchbook again, but instead of recreating the woman's face, she began to draw from memory. capturing the essence of the connection they had shared, sketching scenes where the woman in red was alive and real, not just a figure trapped in a painting. She drew her in different places, walking through the city streets, sitting in cafes, even wandering through fields bathed in sunlight. And slowly, sketch by sketch, the woman's presence returned to her in a different way. No longer bound to the museum, but free to exist in Silva's world. Months passed. Silva kept her routine, but every Monday, she found herself drawn back to the museum. She never expected the painting to be there again so soon, but the hope lingered, guiding her footsteps back each time. Then, one bright spring morning, as Silva ascended the museum steps once more, she felt something different. The air seemed lighter, the weight she had carried for so long was suddenly gone. She pushed through the doors with a flutter of anticipation in her chest. Her heart raced as she walked the familiar path, the soft click of her shoes on marble echoing in her ears. And there she was, the woman in red, restored to her rightful place on the mustard-yellow wall. Silva's breath caught in her throat, her chest tightening with a surge of emotion she hadn't expected. She was back. The fierce gaze, the tender smile, the flowing silk, it was all the same. Yet, something had changed. Silva stepped closer, her eyes searching the familiar face, the delicate strokes of the brush capturing every detail of the woman's beauty. But as she stood there, taking in the sight of the painting once more, she realized something she hadn't noticed before. The woman's expression had softened. Her eyes, still intense, held something new, something deeper. A quiet understanding. Silva smiled, feeling a strange warmth bloom in her chest. She sat down on the bench, pulling out her sketchbook for the first time in weeks. But she didn't feel the need to sketch today. She didn't need to capture the woman's likeness on paper anymore. Their connection had transcended that. Instead, Silva just sat there, letting the silence wrap around her, content in the presence of the woman in red once more. And this time, she knew she wasn't alone. The woman's gaze held her, a silent promise passing between them. This was only the beginning. Day after day, Silva returned, unable to resist the magnetic pull of the painting. With each visit, she felt the woman in the red dress revealing more of herself. At first, it was just details. Stray strands of hair, the gentle curve of her lips, the brilliant diamonds hidden behind the fall of her hair. But soon, Silva felt as if she were engaging in a silent conversation with the woman, a dialogue carried through gazes and gestures alone. The intensity of her presence filled Silva's thoughts, invading her dreams and consuming her waking hours. She couldn't understand the emotions the woman stirred in her. Was it admiration? Désir? Longing? All she knew was that the painting had taken hold of her heart in a way nothing ever had. Each day, she sketched, trying to capture the woman's soul on paper, but it always felt inadequate, like she was missing some vital piece. Then one Monday, as Silva hurried to the museum, her excitement bubbling over, she arrived to find the painting gone. The walls where it had hung were bare, the mustard wallpaper mocking her with its emptiness. Silva stood frozen, her chest tightening as the realization hit her. The woman was gone. A wave of grief surged through her, sharp and unexpected. She sat on the bench, her sketchbook still in hand, flipping through the pages filled with images of the woman in red. But now, each drawing felt hollow, as if the essence of the woman had vanished along with the painting. Her presence, which had once filled Silva with warmth, now left a cold void in its place. For hours, Silva remained on the bench, staring at the blank wall, the weight of her loss pressing heavily on her chest. The woman in the painting had become more than just an image. She was a reflection of Silva's deepest emotions, her unspoken desires, and now, with her gone, Silva felt an ache that she couldn't shake. The woman had changed her. And though she was gone, she had left a mark on Silva's heart, one that would linger long after the museum doors had closed. Silva knew she would never forget her. The memory of her gaze, her fierce beauty, and the connection they had shared, even in silence, would stay with her always. It was love, she realized. In her solitude, in the quiet of her own heart, Silva had fallen in love with the woman in red. And now, she would carry her with her, always. As she stood to leave the empty room, her hand hovered over the last blank page of her sketchbook. With a deep breath, she closed it without drawing. Some things, she realized, were meant to remain unsaid, unwritten.